top searched term in the counselling directory is anxiety. Anxiety is the search term that comes up at the top of the list again and again. It is what most people who are looking for counselling search for. That's the first thing they type is anxiety. And it shows just how many of us and how many people deal with anxiety and are struggling with anxiety and find it overwhelming. And in my experience, and this is what I want to focus on in this reflection, is the grip and the hold that anxiety has over us. It can put us in an emotional prison. We can feel locked emotionally, and that there's no way for that anxiety to shift from within us. So we look to outside of us. We point the finger, we blame others, we get angry at others. We start showing hate and frustration, and that anxiety just, we unload it. We unload it through those means, but we're not really addressing the root cause of the problem. And for many years, I had struggled with anxiety and figuring out exactly how I can properly deal with the anxiety I was having, because part of me was confused as to where the anxiety was coming from, what was causing it. And another part of me saw things like meditation and journaling as very trivial. Oh, so cliche, so trivial. It doesn't help. It is not. How can that help really address this crippling anxiety I'm feeling, this overwhelming feeling that I'm having that's affecting me completely? And I want you to think back to a time that anxiety has struck you, or perhaps is currently striking you, is overwhelming you. And keep that in mind as you watch this video, because what I'm going to be talking about is, for me, quite complicated. And I'm still getting to grips with this concept of challenging the anxiety. But keep it in mind, because something may well resonate with you watching this. What happens with me is that when I feel anxiety, the first thing the anxiety does is it forces you to justify the anxiety being there in the first place. It's a very unsettling feeling when we're feeling anxious and we look around and we have no reason to be anxious. No one is threatening our life. No one's being hurt. Nothing traumatic is happening, yet we're feeling anxious. Everyone might be having a good time laughing. That might in itself be a trigger for anxiety. So it's a very unsettling feeling when you're feeling anxious and there's no reason to be anxious in the moment. But what happens is, because there's no reason to be anxious, we feel unsettled because it doesn't make sense. And instead of the anxiety going away and thinking, well, there's no reason for me to be here, it stays and it recruits your thoughts as agents to serve it. It starts playing with your thoughts of what could happen, what might happen. This is why I'm here. The anxiety. This is why the anxiety is here, because this might happen, or that might happen, or this could happen. Things that have not happened yet might happen, so I belong here. And instead of enjoying the moment, being in the moment where nothing's happened, you are not. You are in the midst of your thoughts, suffering from a future that has not yet happened, causing your own suffering. Because the anxiety, once it's there, it starts recruiting your thoughts to justify it being there. And once your thoughts get going, the body follows. The fire in the chest, the knotted stomach, kind of gut-wrenching feeling, the heart in the throat, the tension in the jaw, the closed fists, the hunched shoulders. the body starts coming in, because now you're imagining scenarios where that anxiety is thriving. It's loving it. It's hungry. The anxiety is hungry for thoughts. I'm saying this with hindsight. I don't want you to watch this, because I'm actually speaking to a previous version of myself now in this video. I don't want you to watch this thinking, I'm really weak. Why am I letting this thing get over me? I have the benefit of hindsight and experience where I'm telling you this, because you are powerless, because you're lacking the skills and the knowledge and the experience of having gone through this again and again to realize this is what's happening, this is what I need to do. You're only following what your body and your thoughts are telling you, which is to justify the anxiety is there, and therefore play to the fear and play to the frustration, play to that anxiety. And the problem is with that, when you feel the anxiety and the thoughts start playing and you're feeling the tension in the body, the uneasiness, if it was hard to get rid of that anxiety before, it's even harder now. And this is what I meant by saying that you're now trapped in an emotional prison. You're locked in. There's no way to escape other than to give into what the anxiety wants you to do. Maybe it wants you to get off that busy train because you're feeling overwhelmed. Maybe it wants you to call it an early night. Everyone's having fun, but just go home early. Maybe it wants you to not leave the house in case something happens. Anxiety plays up in different ways. And I've imprisoned myself many times. And the thing is, often with anxiety, we don't look inside as to what is happening. The anxiety is pointing its finger outside of us. This might happen, that might happen, this person said this. We're pointing and looking outside. Now, the problem there is that no one injected us with anxiety. No one is holding anxiety and putting it on us. The anxiety is generated from within us, by us. Now, why is it there? Someone may have said something or done something that caused the anxiety in the first place. But it is not the act that causes the anxiety. It is the meaning that we assign to the act based on our own perception and interpretation. So one event might happen, and I might perceive it as being a positive thing, and therefore I have no need for anxiety. Someone else might perceive it as a negative thing, and therefore they now are experiencing anxiety. Anxiety is not bad. Anxiety is not bad. It's crucial. It's important. We shouldn't experience everything without anxiety. It doesn't make sense. We need anxiety. But it is when you are feeling anxiety when there is no need for it. When you're in a situation where there is no harm or threat or anything bad happening, and you're experiencing anxiety, and it starts to impact your life and your daily life and your existence, and sabotages you of the opportunity to experience joy, pleasure, contentment, peace. This is when it starts becoming a problem. This is when you are locked in an emotional prison, and this is when you have to search for the path towards emotional freedom. One of the ways you can do this, and I've spoken before about journaling, I've spoken before about meditation, but I want to bring in something new, which I've recently come across, and I'm still getting my head around it, because it's kind of branching into philosophy and spirituality, which is something I'm still learning a lot about. It's called The Works, developed by Byron Katie. Remarkable woman. A remarkable woman has a hell of a story to tell, and it's so simplistic it confuses me. I guess I'm just used to very complicated ways of dealing with problems. It's often the most simple and straightforward solutions are the hardest ones to master. It's called the works. Now, but essentially how this framework operates is that you do what you ordinarily would not do when you're feeling anxious. That's why it's such a beautiful exercise. You challenge the thought that generated the anxiety in the first place. And when she challenges it full on, even to the point it doesn't make sense. So the example that she uses is, I am angry because Paul lied to me. So you are angry because Paul lied to you. It is the act, he lied, but it's the thought that caused the anxiety. Because if you're, let's say, happy that someone lies to you, you're not going to feel anxious, you're going to be happy. So it's the meaning, it's the interpretation. Okay. Now, the way she challenges, or it gets you to challenge that thought, is to reverse it and then flip it upside down. So, Paul lied to me. I lied to me. I lied to Paul. Paul did not lie to me. So you take that statement, you take that thought, and you flip it and reverse it, and you examine each one. It's very difficult because it kind of doesn't make sense. You know, if someone lies to you and then you're flipping, okay, let me think, maybe I lied to me. Like, what? This doesn't make sense. You know, this again is why it's called the works, because you have to stay with it and examine the truth in every single one of those statements. And I did that exercise recently and I was shocked by how effective it was and it actually worked. Because I realized when I was frustrated with someone and I'd always said it's them, and this was going on for months, this narrative in my head is it's them, they've caused me this, they caused me that. Through this exercise, I now realize that I did it to myself and I did it to them. I caused myself the pain and I caused them the pain. It wasn't them that caused me the pain. And it's so powerful because I feel like I've blasted the jail bars open. I don't feel locked emotionally anymore. It's a remarkable exercise, and I am going to be doing a separate video on it because it deserves its own video once I've really got the nuances of it and mastered it. But the next time you have a thought that reinforces a negative emotion, ask yourself 4 questions. Is that thought true? Do you absolutely know that it's true? How do you react when you believe that thought? And who or what would you be without that thought? That last one's the killer for me. Who or what would you be if you did not have that thought? And for me, it's a very freeing exercise. It is the thought. It is not the act. An act that someone does is external to you. An act is just an act. It is the meaning of the act that determines our thoughts and therefore our feelings and therefore our behaviors. So it is the thought that sits within us that determines how we feel, how we think, how we act, not what someone else does. We point the finger, it's them that does it, but that's what the anxiety wants you to do. You need to point the finger back at you. When you point the finger at someone, look at that. You point the finger, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you. So make sure you sit with that. And next time you blame someone for feeling a certain way, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you and ask yourself, is that thought true? Who or what would I be without that thought? Do I absolutely know that thought is true? And how do you react when you have that thought? When you examine that thought against each of those questions, you better understand the thought. And it goes back to what we do not learn as a society. We are so caught up in being the best at this, being successful, earning money, achieving social status, that we do not learn how to challenge negative thoughts we have. We assume it's true because it makes us feel emotionally, it makes us feel a certain way. We therefore assume it's true. We don't challenge our own thoughts because our ego comes into the picture and we like to think that we are right and that our opinion is the right way and that we are living the ideal life and the life you should. And it's the ego that can get in the way of that process of actually saying, let me stop, let me pull out this thought, let me examine it and break it down and try to understand how it's impacting me and whether it's valid in the first place. Emotional freedom is when you are able to scale back and stop. Stop. You have to stop. That's the first step. Because the thought that comes in triggers the emotion you feel, and the anxiety, which triggers and recruits more thoughts to come in and add to that narrative to justify its existence. And now you're warped in this whirlpool of despair and pain and anxiety and fear. And you're being sucked lower and lower and lower, whereas all the while there was this gentle, wavy ocean you could have just been floating on blissfully that you've missed out on. Stop. Challenge the thoughts you have. That is your ticket towards emotional freedom. If you are trapped within the confines of a negative emotion, you are locked in an emotional prison. Particularly when you look around you and you find there's nothing that I can see that is justifying the existence of this negative emotion. Yet I feel fearful, anxious, because my thoughts are all surrounding it and cuddling my anxiety. It's feeding it. The anxiety is feeding off these thoughts, getting bigger and stronger. When you stop feeding that anxiety, and gradually it becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. But with regular practice, with regular compassion, with regular self-care. And by the way, taking 10 minutes out, 20 minutes out in the day or in the week, that in itself is a form of self-care because you're allotting yourself that time. You watching this video is a form of self-care because you are carving out the space and time to sit with what is very difficult content of sitting with thoughts and anxiety and negative emotions and just sitting with it, understanding it and challenging it. Because the thoughts and anxiety want you to just go with it, move forward. It's very uncomfortable to stop and think about it and ruminate on it. You got to go forward, go forward. But by stopping, you are breaking that cycle and you have the opportunity to insert a change. I want to finish with a kind of statement, a thought that I had that came to me as I was kind of preparing for notes for this video, was we don't create the world that we live in, but we create the world that we experience. And there's a difference. You have a chance to experience an amazing life, a great life. And a lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it has to do with the way that you interpret things. It has to do with the way that you allow any anxiety or negative emotion to fester and gain momentum and get bigger and bigger through feeding on your thoughts, draining your energy. It all lies within you. Thank you for watching.